This is episode number 20 of DevOpsParadox with Darin Pope and Viktor Farcic. I am Darin.
And I am Viktor.
And today we are going to revisit configuration management, which we talked about in episode 5. We got a pretty scathing email from one of our former coworkers that had a beef with some of the things that we discussed. And we decided to do something new. We brought John Laffey. He is our former coworker. He now works for a vendor. John, why don't you introduce yourself real quick?
Thank you. Good morning. Scathing is a little rough, but my name is John Laffey. I am a sales engineer for Puppet. So understand I have a bias towards configuration management.
And that's okay. It's okay to have biases.
Actually, I hate people who don't have a bias. Not having a bias means that you have no opinion.
Good point. Good point.
So with that said, now he sent us an email, okay, not scathing, but I was trying to incite at least a little bit of a fight this morning. With the email that he sent, I read it, but Viktor did not.
No.
In the plan that we didn't know, Viktor wanted to be like, okay, let's really talk about this. And honestly, John, it's been how long since you sent that email? It's probably been a month and a half, 2 months.
Yeah, 6 to 8 weeks. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I don't even remember it. So, which it's
tells
been
you
a
something.
long 2 months. Yeah.
That says something about your age, man.
Look, respect your elders, son.
Yeah. My father always said, if your memory goes, forget it.
Okay, if everybody was watching video on this, you would have just seen me pause and look away going, what? And then it hit. So yeah, I think that might be it. Or maybe it's just dehydration from morning still. Okay, but anyway. So John, why don't you go ahead and start with the statement that, or if you remember the statement or a rough estimate of the statement, I mean, you can lie about it too, it's fine. Of what we said that sort of went, you're full of crap.
Well, happily. My argument isn't necessarily with what you said, but it's with the fact that I don't think the real world reflects what the industry trades, the blogosphere is telling us, and that's sort of the position you were taking. Viktor said, and I actually wrote it down.
So he made you that mad that you had to write it down.
I had to. I listened over and over again. And I don't have it in front of me or I can't find it, but it was something along the lines of, if something goes wrong with the config of a VM, you tear it down and you rebuild it. And I admit that is the nirvana. That's what they taught us in AWS school. I would be willing to bet money 95 or better % of the people never do that. The world looks at cloud resources the same way they look at on-prem resources. They're big honking machines that they set up and they will take care of forever and ever. They don't use them disposably the way that the theory dictates they should. Never upgrade, spin up a new one, copy your data over, cut over at some point, and away you go. I don't think that's the real world. In the real world, people are still using cloud servers mostly the same way they use on-prem servers. So they need some sort of way to keep drift and keep compliance on these things past day zero. I don't disagree with your day zero. Using Terraform to spin up a machine, it's going to tell you this is exactly what this machine has. But after day zero, things happen. People have sticky fingers. Configuration changes. Somebody upgrades something on the fly. And you need config management software to bring that back into compliance. And you need it auditable too, because failing an audit is hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars in fines. So you need good software that can spew out logs that can you give to an auditor and say, hey, here is my proof. Here is my Puppet code. Here is my Chef code. Here is my Ansible code. All of these machines are under management, and we make sure that we make all of these configuration in place all the time. So I think it's just the difference between the nirvana, what the trade journals make us believe is out in the world and what's really out in the world. And maybe you guys have run into something different, but I definitely haven't. I think people are using virtual servers and even Docker containers as machines.
To be honest, now I feel bad that I didn't read that email because I agree with almost everything you said.
Well, we're done here.
Yeah, exactly. So the thing missing is that from what you said is that you said that's not the reality for 95% of companies, people, teams, whatever it is. And I agree. The note that is missing is that 95% do not know what they're doing.
And yet they do it anyway.
They do it anyway, exactly. And I completely agree. What I was saying, or we were saying in that episode, does not reflect the majority of people. But I also still stick with my guns that my point is that majority of people shouldn't be doing what majority of people is doing. That's the key difference.
Okay, I'm not going to argue that with you, but we have to live in the real world. And I think in the real world, config management software and vulnerability remediation, or at least vulnerability reporting, has got to be out there. It's still, the podcast was called, "Is Config Management Still Relevant?"
That depends on, I guess, how we define relevancy. For example, we can say, is mainframe still relevant, right? And now, if by relevant means do many use mainframe, then the answer is definitely yes. If relevant means you should be using mainframe, then the answer is a bit more complicated, right? I guess that where we might be disagreeing is what relevant means, right?
Well, yeah, and again, I'm biased because I sell Puppet software. But people still need config management software, and that's my point. Is we are nowhere near the way that, and like I said, they taught me this in AWS school: is never upgrade a server, never patch a server, bring it up, bring a new version up, move your data over, do a cutover. That is the nirvana. That is the best practice. But who's actually doing it is my point. And I don't think that many people are doing it. And I agree that's a problem. But, I have to live in the real world. It's a huge paradigm shift, I think. And I call it the Dixie Cup versus the stemware version. You talk about, you're familiar with pets versus cattle.
Yeah.
To me, there's also the Dixie Cup versus stemware. Is your server something that's nice that you're going to keep clean? It's a nice glass and you're going to wash it and you're going to keep it on a shelf, or is it a Dixie cup? You're going to use it, crush it, throw it away. And I don't think anyone's there. That's the hardest leap for people to make.
Yeah, but see, I live in the South, and the Dixie cup is stemware.
I can't argue with that. The jelly jar versus...
Yes. Okay, now you're stomping on my family.
Well, my wife is from Alabama, so...
So, to me, that's a similar discussion. Like, let me be biased now for a moment. I don't know, actually, if I can do it. Anyway, to me, that's a similar discussion like Jenkins versus Jenkins X, right? For the vast majority of people, Jenkins is the tool, right? And they will not get to Jenkins X anytime soon. Right? That's a reality because they're not fully in Kubernetes, and if they are, they have silly processes, they have accumulated, I was about to say shit, but that's not allowed, right? Trash. And they
yes,
need
it is now, so that's fine.
There you go.
There goes the chat box for explicit. There we go. All right.
And so on and so forth. So for the vast majority of people, Jenkins X is impossible today. And Jenkins is the reality. But still, when I talk about, I will always say, hey, Jenkins X is the future. You should, that's the goal you should be striving for. And if between where you are right now and the goal you should be striving for, we're going to add 57 different tools to help you get there, that's fine. So I think that and that's very hard for me to articulate is when I speak, is that most of the time I'm talking about, based on today's knowledge, what should be your destination. And that destination can be reached tomorrow or in 57 years, or for 70% of the companies, never. Right?
Yes. And therein is the rub, because for 70%, they won't get there. Because I think part of the problem is people want to adopt the latest technology, but they want to fit it into their ecosystem as opposed to altering their ecosystem for the new technology. You just can't change minds. It's the hardest thing to do.
You're spot on now. The way how I like to describe it is that every tool was created by a team of people, right? And they translated their own internal processes into how the tool works. And their processes are a result of their culture, how they organized. And what we do, most of the other companies do, is that they just adopt that tool, completely forgetting that for that tool to be as useful to them as it was to creators of that tool, they need to adopt their way of working. And that's where most companies fail, kind of.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I go into companies all the time and they say, I'm doing this. And I look at them and go, why? Is there a better way? Yeah, let me show you. And that's what I based my career on.
Oh man, you're lucky. Most of those that I visit, they tell me, no, because we do things differently, and there is no way on earth that I will actually even get in contact with the person who made those decisions. So there is no discussion.
That's a reality. And I've been at companies that have been customers for years who say, yes, every year you guys come in and you give us a laundry list, and you call 6 months later and say, did you do any of it? And I have to go, no, and hang my head. That is the problem. But until then, getting back to the original topic, I think config management is absolutely critical.
Yes.
Because they've got to keep there are so many IT departments and DevOps groups that spend their days running around fighting fires. And I say that as a former practitioner as well. And good configuration management, if it doesn't solve that problem, at least it lets you go fight other fires and puts that fire out.
Yes, I honestly agree with that.
Oh, see, complete agreement.
There you go.
What more? How often do we get that? Nirvana.
No. I think that the main misunderstanding was that I think that actually not only that episode, but most of the time when I talk about some subject, I'm talking about the destination, and and that's my mistake. I rarely touch it in public. When I visit companies, it's a different situation. But in public, I rarely touch the subject. Okay, so. Let's figure out where you are, and then I'm going to tell you that destination you will never reach, because guess what? You don't live in 21st century.
Yes. Stuff like that. You can't get there. You're in your own way.
So kind of, if I would have to place a bet, I think that it's more likely that your company is going to go bankrupt than you getting there.
That's a great way to clear your calendar, not be invited back. But it is. I mean, people can't get in their own way. They see these nirvanas and say, oh, we'll put everything in the cloud and we'll save money. I actually saw a report just this week that several major companies, including a major retailer, they are starting to reevaluate their cloud strategy because they've been moving towards it for 2 years with this promise of cost savings, and they're not seeing them because they're not adopting the agile practices. They're spinning up great big servers in the cloud. They're leaving them running 24/7. And then when they need a new one, they spin a new one up and they patch it. They're treating their VMware and their cloud instances exactly like a physical instance.
Well, this is the pattern that's normal, to where people's like, oh yeah, we're going all in on cloud. It's just an extension of our data center. And that phrasing is horrible and usually very indicative of where they're spiraling out of control. It's like you're treating cloud as just, hey, this is just our other data center that's hooked in. You're doing it wrong. Sorry.
And that's exactly. But in the real world, having people walk up to me at trade shows and things and say, so what does Puppet do in the cloud? And my response to that is always, well, what are you doing in the cloud? Are you fully containerized? Are you a Docker Swarm? Are you Kubernetes? Or are you doing what you just said, Darin? Are you moving half of your servers in the cloud and patting yourself on the back and say, yep, we're cloud?
Check.
Yeah, and that's, and in the case there is then yes, Puppet and all the config management are still relevant because managing resources in the cloud is exactly like managing resources on-prem. The software doesn't care.
Right. So the short of it is what we're talking about here isn't a technology problem.
It's a people problem.
It's a people and process problem.
So if we could get rid of the people, generally speaking, we would solve most of the problems.
Viktor Farcic, founder of Skynet. and they're sort of apologetic about it because when you say, oh, well, my software can do all these wonderful things and let me come in and show you how I can free up your time and make you stop fighting fires and go do something interesting. A lot of times the response is, that'd be great. I don't have time.
But, the three of us are contributing greatly to that behavior. And let me explain why. Because all three of us work in software company, and our business is to sell software one way or another, right? And so what we're doing, when I say we, I don't mean necessarily literally each one of us, but what we are doing is representatives of those companies that we go to other companies and say, you know what? If you buy this piece of software and pay us a decent amount of money, all your problems are going to be solved. That's how every single software company operates in the world, right?
That's the pitch, yeah.
Give me the money, you get some bits and bytes, and your problems will be gone. Very few companies, and almost no software company, will go there and say, you know what, getting this software is a good idea, but you have problems that are beyond software, man. You need to solve those. Because that's not our business. And I mean, I cannot speak for you, John, but I know I can speak only for myself. That's what we do, right? We sell software, and that's our business. So we are telling people, buy our application, buy our solution, and your life will be better. And it doesn't if they don't make other changes.
Right. It's not our fault. I mean, I would love all of my customers to completely embrace it, and it really can make their lives better. But again, you get into that, I don't have time to learn a new software or learn a new way of making my job better. I'm too busy to improve my job.
Well, and this goes in line with something I was listening to this week. Basically, what they're saying is, I can't.
Yes, yeah.
But the challenge in this thing that I was listening to is, instead of saying can't, replace can't with I won't. And that changes it and puts it on its head.
It's a false argument to begin with, because what they're really saying is, I cannot because I spend too much time maintaining something that is ridiculous, right? And I cannot because I'm saying cannot for years now already. And every day passing, my cannot is bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So it will just get worse. Right? You cannot do it simply because you let yourself get into that situation, and you continue letting yourself getting into that situation.
But it's also, it's habit. Some years ago, I worked for a software company. We released a change. It annoyed one of our customers. It required them to do this manual process of running a report, and they were very upset, and it was a big customer. But some years later, we sold them the latest version of the product, and it could no longer do that workaround because they didn't need it. And they came back to us and said, well, we can't do this anymore. What started as a workaround that annoyed them became standard operating procedure. And they were upset when they could no longer do it. The reason they couldn't do it was you don't have to anymore. But, people get used to, yeah, it's difficult, but I know how to do it. It's the day-to-day thing, so why would I change? And I think that's what gets in the way is, I'm afraid. This works, I'm going to stick to it.
Yeah. But on the other hand, it's our job to tell people in a much more polite way than what I'm going to do right now. But it's our job to say, you're not normal. You don't understand what's going on. Your decisions are wrong. Let me help you make good decisions. And if they say no, and I had a lot of trouble because what I'm going to say, they say, no, we want exactly like this. Sometimes I would just turn around and walk away, say, okay, then I cannot help you. I'm not going to help you do a bad implementation. I'm not going to help you shoot yourself in the foot. Because what I do know, even from business perspective, that's a bad thing. Because what will happen is that next year, they will come back to me and say, this doesn't work. And it doesn't work because I accepted their request instead of standing firm and saying, no, that's a bad idea. You are not supposed to do that. I'm not going to help you because it's going to backfire to you and to me. That's kind of like long-term thinking instead of trying to make a quick win. I'm going to make a win for this week,
And that gives your software, if you're selling it, a bad reputation as well, because it's someone who now tried to implement it and failed. And they'll be more than happy to tell everybody they know, I bought this stuff and it didn't do a damn thing for me. Well, that's,
sometimes they say also, I bought this stuff and Viktor told me that I'm an idiot. I don't want to work with them. So it can backfire as well.
But it all boils back to a mindset problem. So how do we help people change their mind? Other than probably adult beverages.
Yeah. Well, give them T-shirts.
T-shirts and stickers, that solves everything?
T-shirts and stickers solves everything. I think what you got to do is demonstrate the real value. And I know that's a proposition where you work. It's a proposition where I work, which is you get quick return on it. Let them see quickly. Oh, look, we just solved a problem that you spend 2 hours a week fixing. Now, in the course of the year, you're spending hundreds of hours on that. But I just gave you 2 hours a week back. Want to use that 2 hours to show you how I can get 4 more? As technologists, I think that's what we need to do.
That's one of the things I have problem with is that I believe that in many cases, all easy fixes are already done by companies. And they're in deep trouble, mostly because they're left with a lot of problems that don't have an easy fix. So very often I go to a company and say, look, you want an easy fix? There is no easy fix. There is a workaround that will make you survive for a year or more. But the real fix is this goes to trash, including your people. We're starting again. And not because none of you is stupid. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that you're dumb. I'm just saying that you let things rot for 10 years. And after 10 years, which is kind of like doggy years, that's like 70 years in IT industry. After those 10 years of negligence, there is nothing that can be done quickly to help you.
I had the same problem recently at a prospect. They're still running Red Hat 5. And they came to us and said, we need... What they said they wanted was, we want to get modern, we want to get on the latest. What they were actually saying to us as we talked to them was, we need your help to kick the can down the road a few more years, so we don't have to address this mess. And of course, we can't help them because we don't want to do that. That's not what we do for a living. It's exactly what you were saying. I don't want to do this because in 2 years, you're going to be in an even bigger mess and you're going to blame me.
Yeah, or you will not exist as a company.
Right.
One of the
Yeah.
things.
That's which is why I really believe that, outside the nirvana, there's a huge market for config management and I guess incrementally changing, because that's the question, is how do you help them out of that? And is it incrementally changing? Is it waiting until something major happens, like a large company gets hit by Heartbleed, and they have to go explain how they were hit by a vulnerability that's 3 years old and well documented?
It needs to be incremental. It cannot not be incremental. The only way not to be incremental is for you to shut down that company and create a new one. So it has to be incremental. Nobody can skip through time. So if you right now live in 1998, you cannot jump to 2019. You need to go through 1999, 2000, 2001, etc., etc., etc. You need to go through all those steps that many others went before you to get to the present tense. Now, your advantage by doing that, actually, there are two advantages when you do that. First of all, you don't need to go with the same pace. You can go through a year within 2 months, right? You can go faster than the real time. And there is a collective experience that you can use. So you're not a pioneer.
You can learn from other people's mistakes.
Exactly. The only thing, and this is now where I get confused, because I'm trying to say, companies always say, why are you trying to figure this out? There is nothing to figure out. You don't live in present tense. You just need to do exactly the same what others did before you. So turn off your brain for now until you get to 2019 and do what other companies, the unicorn companies, did before you. That's all there is to do. You're running on bare metal? Let me explain you about virtual machines. You're not jumping from bare metal to containers. You're not jumping you're not building your own cloud data center because you have no idea how to do that. If you're running on-prem, go to AWS, and then after some time in AWS, go back to your data center and build the same. Great. Be Netflix. That's brilliant. But you cannot not do the steps that others did before you. That's my theory. And that pisses people off. Oh, I did another easy fix. Swear word.
Yes. But it is a problem because people want the easy fix. We're here. Show us how your product is going to get us there. And as you say, because you have to go through all those steps. Well, I don't want the steps. I want to install and push the button and be there.
And the problem is that, and this is now the problem where we come as kind of part of the problem. And then they come to me and say, but we're thinking about giving you 100K or $1 million, right? And you're telling me that you cannot fix my problem? I'm going to go to somebody else. I'm going to go to IBM. They say that they can fix my problem. They're better liars than you are.
and that's the problem. But call me in 4 years when IBM hasn't fixed your problem, or whoever it is. I don't want to pick on IBM.
That's the right attitude. But many companies don't have that attitude. You saw something green passing by you. You wanna get it. It's money.
Or they have the short attention span. And okay, we'll get this new tool. We'll use it for this little one thing, and we'll pat ourselves on the back. And we'll forget about all those other steps. We're going to take the first step or the first 2 steps, and that will now become part of our culture. And all that other stuff is never going to happen because we lost the vision. We couldn't focus for that long. That's how you get stuck on Red Hat 5 in 2019.
I envy you, John, if you're speaking with people who lost their vision, because that means that they had. I speak with people who never had a vision.
That's the other problem. I burn down your data center, put everything in the cloud. It'll force you to go cloud.
Yeah, and it will fail, as you said, because you're going to do the same thing in cloud.
Is that a service that somebody could actually sell?
Burning down your data center?
Oh, I have means. Give me a bit of gasoline and I can do that.
Oh, well. Okay, so, and we're sort of here at time, because, well, I got another call to get on. Let me do the normal thing. So, at the time you're listening to this, Viktor's new book, DevOpsParadox, should be out.
Hey, I just published it.
Oh, you published it?
Yeah, it's 100% done. I just means a couple of steps to put it on Amazon.
No, I said DevOpsParadox, not your
Paradox.
toolkit.
Okay.
Paradox. Go back to sleep.
I don't even know what I'm writing anymore. Okay, cool.
Okay,
cool.
So anyway, Paradox. So we'll get to there in a second. Give me a minute. This episode is releasing on September 11th. We talked about this before we started recording today. Viktor was like, September 11th? I said, yeah, okay, it's a U.S. thing, right? I still remember that day just like it was yesterday. I think it was this 18 years now. I was on a phone call with a client in Tower 1 when the plane hit. And I am still, I still can't watch anything. So that's how I deal with September 11th. And I know there's lots of other stories, and there's been lots of great stories that are out there. In fact, I was just in downtown New York, or in Manhattan a few weeks ago at the time of the recording. And I was standing in the building. I was actually in what's called World Trade 3 right now, looking down on the two big reflecting pools where the towers were. And it's still hard, to say the least. So if you're in the US and you're listening to this on September 11th, just pause for a second. Horrible things happen that day, great things happen that day. Probably one of the few times in U.S. politics where people were in agreement on something. Hopefully it never comes to that point again. But anyway, all right, so that's the unhappy, sad part of the show. So DevOpsParadox should be out based on what we saw last. I haven't looked at the dates yet. So it may be out today. If not, it's coming really, really soon, depending on the publisher. Now, let's go to DevOps Toolkit. You say... At the time, we're recording on August 30th, so we'll be completely transparent here. You're saying you just finished it up, so the final is on Leanpub as of today. So by the time you're listening on September 11th, it's there.
Yes, and on Amazon, ebook will be probably later today. And
so by the time you're listening to this, it's going to be on Amazon. Now, if you want to buy it on Amazon, great. You can get it on your Kindle. However, if you want updates, how do you handle updates for Amazon?
No, Amazon, if it's ebook, Amazon is okay because I control it.
You'll just update Kindle. Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Now, people don't get notifications, so you need to figure out whether it's updated or not, but that's a different story. Now, for the rest of places, I have no idea whether it will ever get updated. I don't control those things.
So if you're going to buy and you want to be able to get updates, you will want to buy either the Kindle version from Amazon or just go to Leanpub and buy the book directly there. And you'll get that'll be the fastest set of updates probably, because once it's cut, it's there. I love the Leanpub model. It's a very cool thing. Now, so that's done. So in our next episode, we'll start talking about, now that by the time we get to this point, all the books are done. So you'll take off a week and then start on your next one. But don't go there yet. Just wait.
No. That depends. Jameses are probably gonna release 57 new features 15 minutes after I publish the book, and then I will need to republish it.
The Jameses that he's speaking of are the Jameses behind Jenkins X. So, yes. So if you have any questions or comments about this episode, you can reach out to us on the Slack team DevOps20. That's DevOps, the number 2 and the number 0. You can sign up for a free account and join the podcast channel. The link to join is down in the show notes. Also, new feature. If I had cool audio, I'd do cool audio right now. If you want to leave us a voice message, see, John, you're on this. Everything's happening. We got John on live. Our first time having a live guest. Actually, I don't think we even had a dead guest before. But if you want to leave us a voicemail, you can do that on Voxer. You can set up a free account, a free personal account on Voxer. You can add DevOpsParadox, all one word. You'll see that if you've been looking at our artwork, that's the artwork that's associated with that account. You can add us as a contact there and leave us a message. And so you can either, if you have a question for us, again, we're question driven. Or in our case today, you guys are totally screwed up and wrong. Here's how it really is. Thanks, John. My words, not John's. You can leave us messages now, so we could play that back and answer it live. That'd be just a different way of answering questions. There are links to the books, the Slack workspace, and the Voxer account down in the description of this episode. Final words. Viktor goes first. John will go last, in deference to our guest. Viktor, go.
Nothing really special. Just I'm uninspired. I'm gonna leave John.
Okay, John, tag, you're it.
Okay.
What's your final thoughts about? By the way, thank you for coming on and being a willing participant to get beat up and to beat us up.
The first non-dead guest.
Yes, thank you.
I'm honored. I guess if I have a parting thought based on what we've talked about, it is when people start looking at solutions, look internally as well, and realize that maybe not everything you're doing is ideal, and try to get over your corporate self, if that's not too controversial to say.
Have you never listened to our show?
I've listened to all of your shows, but
thank you. It's definitely, I'm in agreement. And I'll tag on one more, what I sort of injected in the middle. If you're saying I can't, what you're really saying is I won't. That's a mindset problem.
Amen. Yep.
All right. Thanks again for listening to episode 20 of DevOps Paradox.